Ohio State, 3-0. Washington, 3-0. Carnell Tate, 3 touchdowns in 3 games. Mm-hmm. Are you picking up a theme, Birm?
Well, it's Thursday.
Uh-huh.
That means it's 3 Thoughts Thursday.
That's right.
And we've got a bunch of thrings.
There are a lot of things to talk about. Welcome to The Beat. He's Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. As we get ready, 2 days away from Ohio State at Washington, the Big Ten opener. And the Buckeyes will be leaving today, which is Thursday, to head out to the West Coast. But I was just thinking about what things have we not talked about for this matchup? Because we spent a lot of time. When you get that improvement week, that off week, we've been breaking down, feels like Damon Williams in Washington and the noise for Julian saying like more than any game we've done in a long time. It's like, I think we need to talk about numbers.
Ooh, numbers. Those are nerdy.
Yeah. Well, we don't generally dive into those, right?
No, I mean, but it's not, we're not paying attention to them. It's just sometimes I think statistics, what's the old saying? So you can make statistics say whatever you want them to say, or stats, lies, and damn. So I don't know. I don't know.
Is that what they say?
I don't know the thing. But, you know, the thing about statistics is that people, you can manipulate them to say whatever you want ultimately. And that's why I think a lot of people who are looking at this Ohio State and Washington game are looking at it and going, hey, you know, Ohio State hasn't played great against Ohio, and Washington played great against 3 group of 4 teams. And
2 of them, and then an FCS opponent.
We've seen, I mean, there's something in the air. I mean, here it is. We're you're just shortly beyond 48 hours to game time. And the line for this game has dropped from 13.5 when it was initially put out to 7.5 as of Wednesday afternoon. So there's a belief happening nationally that like Ohio State is not guaranteed to win this game. And I think that's fair, but I also
they're not
think
guaranteed to win it.
No, but I mean, there is, and this will be my first thing, I guess. Spencer Holbrook posted this tweet on the Letterman Row message board on Wednesday. There's only been 2 games in the last 14 years where the number 1 team in the country was playing an unranked team, and the spread was fewer than 10 points, and this is one of them. So clearly there's a lot of people nationally buying into what Washington has done, and I think maybe it's just because everyone watched the Apple Cup, and you saw Damon Williams running around, and you saw the onslaught and the deluge of points that they scored in the fourth quarter in that 3-minute stretch. But like, I think more people are being moved by what their memory of Ohio State was in the Texas game. Like to say, well, Ohio State's not explosive. Ohio State couldn't run the ball. Washington has the number 9 ranked rush defense in the country. They're not giving up any. They gave up like 80 yards rushing in the first quarter to Colorado State. That's the first game of the season. So like they're it's not like they're dominant.
And then they've given us, to your point, they've given up the rushing yards to Colorado State, and then they gave up passing yards to Washington State.
To a Washington State team that is pretty bad. Now, one of the things that we'll talk about today is the Washington injuries. I think that's something that needs to be discussed, but we're talking numbers right now, and the number is 7.5.
So the number that you dug up. So let's maybe talk about
7.5
stats. You were like, point spread,
well,
baby.
because it keeps changing. I mean, this game, it is a 1-score game now, and it's according to the national, the people who know these things. And so
the odds makers.
Vegas is pretty good about this. They're generally pretty much in the ballpark. So whatever they're seeing, whatever they're thinking, I don't know if it's based on, again, maybe it's just a reaction to what people remember about Ohio State, Texas, and trying to assume that this is a similar game because of the first road game and all that stuff. But like, that is the fact that that's almost been cut in half in 4 days is telling to what people around the country expect.
Yeah, or, you know, where the money is going. And, you know, we don't control that. And it doesn't.
People hate Ohio State. They don't believe in Ohio State. They never believed in Ohio State. Ohio State ran through the playoffs last year and returned, obviously not a full complement of its players, but no one wanted to make them number 1 after the week 1 of the season when they beat Texas. Nobody thought they were going to make it through the playoff game. How many national pundits thought Ohio State was going to lose to Tennessee? How many national pundits thought they'd get their doors blown off by Oregon? Who thought they could, like, it's just a trendy thing to be like, oh, Ohio State's actually not that good. And I think that's actually a positive for this team.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the same thing also happened with the spread going into the Texas game, where Ohio State was initially favored throughout the entire offseason. It was around 3.5. At some point, I think it was up to 5.5. And then the closer you got to kickoff, this money poured into Texas and moved the line. And they were some places had the Longhorns favored in that game by the time the kickoff came about. I don't know that I would say that that's because of a hatred or a jealousy.
It's a disrespect.
I think there's a possibility that there's a little bit of disrespect going on there. Again, if it has only happened twice in this century to the number one ranked team in the country, it's a pretty rare occurrence. And to me, and everything that we've said throughout this week and going back to last week, the possibilities and the three main storylines about this matchup, they all are reasons why Ohio State could not play its best game or that Washington could win.
Yeah.
I think it is distinctly possible. There have been a lot of games that you and I have covered where we'd get to a Freaky Friday and bold predictions and I would just laugh. There's just no possible way that Ohio State could lose to Rutgers or that they're going to lose to Northwestern. Like, those things are outside the realm of the possibility. I'm not saying that is it. Like, Ohio State can lose to Washington, but I will also be very surprised if they do, because the talent differential between these two teams is much greater than 7.5. What I would be most interested in, if I could, and I'm not going to take the time to do it. And it's too late now because we're already in the midst of a Three Things Thursday. What are the odds makers? What would they say the spread is for this game if it was at a neutral site, and what do they think it would be at the Horseshoe? Because I simply do not believe that it would be 7.5. I feel like when they opened it up a week ago before the Apple Cup, that's where we saw 13.5 a week ago. That's where they believe that the talent level is. I'm not even frankly convinced that it's that close.
No, I don't think it's that close either. I do think that it's interesting. Something is not adding up. Okay, like Washington did not even receive a vote when it came to the top 25 in the AP poll this week. So people nationally, outside of the people spending money on the gambling side of things, clearly people did not leave the Apple Cup and go, well, this team is a juggernaut. They can't be beat. Now, there were a lot of people who watched that game because Ohio State wasn't on. I bet if you look at the numbers for the Washington television game, if we're talking numbers,
we've never got better ratings in Columbus before.
Wow, what a turnaround for Washington football. But I think something isn't adding up. There's a disconnect somewhere, and I don't know what to really make of it. But the fact that we've seen this line cut in half in a 5-day stretch is pretty insane.
So I didn't think this is what we were going to do.
No.
But I had only really taken two stats that I were going to talk about, because then I was going to open up the third thing for anything else. But you flipped it, because I also have a betting line that has been on the top of my brain for the last couple of days.
We don't talk a lot about gambling on this show, but it is instructive in some ways.
So right now, and you may use a different app than I do. I won't reveal which one I use, just in case any sports books are out there and they want to come be part of the beat. That option is available to you if you want. I can be had. The one I used had Jeremiah Smith to win the Heisman as a futures bet at plus 1150 as of Wednesday afternoon. A Woody Wednesday, in fact. That seems pretty enticing. And I think his numbers, you look at him right now, they're relatively modest by Jeremiah Smith standards. I think he's going to get a lot of targets on Saturday. I think Julian's saying, if all those things that we talked about with going on the road the first time, if Ryan Day and Brian Hartline are going to open up the playbook, if they're going to be aggressive, if they're going to put more on his plate, well, the first place that you look to do that is obviously Jeremiah Smith. Cardinal Tate's not far behind, and I'll get into that later on in this episode. But, with Arch Manning, there was this just assumption that he was going to run away with it this entire season. His odds have plummeted. And then the odds makers looked for the next thing. And then it was John Mateer. And then he hurts his hand and he's out for at least a month. And now they're grasping around, and they've got Fernando Mendoza, number one right now. And so currently Garrett Nussmeier and Carson Beck are then right there as the other options lumped in with Jeremiah Smith. There's a very real possibility that as Jeremiah's numbers take off, and if Ohio State it needs to handle business, and he needs to handle business, of course, for any of these things to come true. It's not going to be handed to him at the end of September, but the Buckeyes are going to remain in contention. I think they're going to win on Saturday. Spoiler alert for Freaky Friday as well. And I already made that clear with the talent differential. But as the football goes his way, as the numbers go up, given his brand and name recognition that exists for him, those odds are going to drop by the time the middle of October runs around. And I think that Heisman Trophy voters are probably going to be inclined to look elsewhere. This quarterback class, once once Arch bottomed out the way he has in September, and he can bounce back. I'm a little skeptical of that with his own health, but we'll see if Steve Sarkisian ever provides any insight on what's going on with that. And with Mateer out for a month and not having an opportunity to play in the Red River game on October 11th, I think they'll start looking around at a non-quarterback winner, and Jeremiah's odds right there could look pretty good.
Yeah, it's not often that the best talent in the country is also the best player in the country, and also is on the best team in the country, and also is the most brand savvy and brandable player in the country. Jeremiah Smith checks a lot of those boxes. And I think this weekend, this is not a bold prediction show, but I think we've seen it in the past where Ohio State plays against a team that has a wide receiver like Denzel Boston for Washington, that there's a lot of talk this week about how good Denzel Boston is. And I've seen it from Jeremiah Smith in the past. When people start to chirp about how good someone else is, he generally seems to take note of it. And I think, we saw it certainly against Oregon in the Rose Bowl. A lot of talk about Evan Stewart and what the Oregon receivers had done to Ohio State when they played in Eugene 2 months earlier. But I think Saturday is a day for Jeremiah Smith to kind of remind people that, yes, Denzel Boston is a very good receiver. He might even be a first-round pick. He's not a guy who's going to be talked about for the next 100 years like Jeremiah Smith will be as long as football exists. So,
yeah, I'm just suggesting that you may have already invested in
the
Jeremiah
Fernando
Smith.
Mendoza stuff is wild. I mean, I'm just gonna detour here.
Okay.
If people want Kirk Cignetti in Indiana to stop scheduling nobodies, and certainly there was some discussion about that after they made the playoff a year ago and whether or not they should. And then this offseason, there's more talk about Indiana being a team that just schedules nonstop cupcakes. Don't reward the behavior by promoting their players for national awards when they're going to play a bunch of. Now, again, I know he had a nice game against the number 9 ranked Illinois on Saturday, but let's not get crazy.
Yeah, and obviously Illinois is no longer ranked number 9. But, the point is, if you already took a ticket on Jeremiah Smith to win the Heisman, it could be a good time to grab another. Because even if you don't want to ride it out all the way to the end, I bet the odds are going to drop significantly. That's my personal expectation, whether that's on Saturday specifically or by November 2nd. And then you might be able to just cash out. And I've seen other people do that with their Heisman tickets in the past.
Yeah, I did it last year. And it turned out great. I mean, I probably should have kept it. I would have won an additional $50, but it wasn't a big deal. What is a big deal is Ohio State has gone play action on 53% of their passes this year, which is way more than I can recall Ohio State doing in the past. And I think it's interesting because play action is only successful when you have a successful run game, and Ohio State's run game has not entirely been successful. And so I'm interested heading into this weekend to see what the approach is right away, because the crowd's going to be pretty full throat early in that game, and it's going to be up to Ohio State to calm them down and quiet them down. And I think that historically speaking, the way you do that is by coming out and grinding out the football and playing man ball up front. But I think for Ohio State, I think the best thing you can do, and this is especially true if Takario Davis, who's the best defensive back in Washington's team, who did not play a week ago against Washington State when they had a pretty tough time covering receivers, if he doesn't play, although I expect he will, I think I could see Ohio State coming out and taking some shots early just to show Washington.
I like shots.
To say, hey, Ryan Day likes shots. We have the quote. Cut it. Okay, we're back. Ryan Day likes shots. And I think that there's an opportunity to go out there and tell Julian saying, we trust you to make the right read, to make the right throw. And you can do that early, and you can really quickly shut up a crowd if you can connect on one of those early. And so that kind of ties into what I'm talking about with Jeremiah Smith. I think there's an opportunity this weekend for him to really put some stuff on display for people. And I don't know if this weekend will be one of those heavy play action type games, because I don't think Washington can stop Ohio State's passing game. And they're without their best linebacker. The best defensive back has been hurt. He's going to play, but he won't be 100%. I think you can have some opportunities to really go attack the middle of their defense with Max Clare and Brandon Innes. But I just think this might be I don't want to say 73 passes like Dwayne Haskins had at Purdue in 2018 when Ohio State lost that game.
Yeah.
But I think we will see a career high in passing attempts for Julian Sayin this weekend, and I think it's going to be your traditional drop back and let it rip. Because the 53%, I think Washington certainly sees that and is wondering, hey, are they going to try to slow it down? Are they going to try to shorten the space between us? And I don't think Ohio State's going to do that.
Yeah, I think that's just a part of the identity of this offense, and with
all multiple set ends and all that stuff.
Yeah, and especially when you get those personnel groupings and you have bigger bodies out there, it has also led to that volume of targets for Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate is based off of that play action and those shots that they're getting off of it. And I think that the other reason I think it may not be all that different on Saturday against Washington is that for all the conversation that we've had about the running backs and Ryan Day pointing to the lack of explosiveness and then, us leaping to the next thing and is Bo Jackson going to be the solution? It is important to focus on that word. Ohio State is not, because of the lack of explosiveness, it means that this yards per carry situation that they're dealing with, they're getting 5, 6, 7 most times they run. They're not turning them into 20. They're not turning them into 30 outside of Bo Jackson's couple long gains that he's had, both against Grambling and against Ohio. So I don't think that the run game is fundamentally broken. And I think the fact that Ohio State can keep itself ahead of the chains in most situations, or at least it has so far, we'll see if they can do that against Washington, has meant that as long as you can average 5 yards per carry, then play action still becomes plenty effective. And I don't think it's wrong to say that you want Ohio State to be more explosive and have more 10, 15, 20-yard gains, but I don't think they're also required for you to have an effective play action game. And it also circles back to what we've talked about with the true identity for this team. It is that they need to capitalize more. Whether that's 40 throws to establish a career high or whether it just means that you get to 35, clearly the football needs to be in Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate's hands more than any of the running backs. That's the way this offense is going to be constructed.
I'm interested just because we believe that this will be the weekend that we start to see, I believe, I'm not going to speak for you, that we start to see some separation between Bo Jackson and the other running backs. Just based on what Ryan Day said on Tuesday, at the end, he tried to filibuster for a few minutes about Bo Jackson's role. And then the very last thing he says, and again, Ryan Day does not want to lie to the media, but he often, I think, will try to obfuscate and confuse. At the end of talking about how James Peoples didn't play much last year and how they're still trying to figure out what he's about and what C.J. Donaldson is. And then he says, but Bo really did flash, and we're going to build off that. So, we're going to build off that, I think, is important. And Bo Jackson changes the play action notion of this team because of his ability to hit a hole quickly, because of how explosive he is. But if Ohio State runs for 5 yards a carry against Washington, they will win this game by 3 scores or more. It's not going to be close if the Buckeyes, again, Washington is the number 9 ranked run defense in the country. If Ohio State goes out and establishes early that they can get 5 yards a pop, they will win this game going away. So I think Washington is in an interesting position because for them, they're going to have to take away the run and force Julian Sayin to beat them with his arm. And that is a risky proposition.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that because you have to devote bodies to Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, who I went for a simple sort of raw number, 18.3 yards per catch for Carnell Tate. If assumption, and I don't want to argue against a straw man, but if the explosiveness from the Ohio State passing attack was going to come from Jeremiah Smith alone, that's not reality. And these deep posts coming off play action for Carnell Tate and the plays that he's making down the field have been sensational. And I think even because of that first catch against Texas where Julian scrambled out to the right and coming out from the end zone, it was well, that's a great another possession play, and he got his feet down and just moved the chains. Carnell Tate is capable of so much more.
Yeah.
And he's averaging 3 more yards per catch than Jeremiah Smith is at this point of the season. And that might change. Carnell's could go down, Jeremiah's can go up. Wouldn't surprise me either way, but both of them are equally capable of stretching and attacking teams down the field. And so that's why I think that the play action will remain part of this arsenal. Again, it allows them to attack with multiple tight ends on the field, allows these routes to develop. And the longer that you have to hold up in coverage against Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith, the more likely every defensive back in the country is to fail. So I wanted to find something to highlight that, because I've said it on Snap Judgments after all 3 games really so far, that Carnell should not be as overshadowed as he is nationally. And I, even within this very show, just advocated for taking Jeremiah Smith's Heisman Trophy odds. But even that, I feel like, is another reminder that Carnell Tate should not be taken for granted. And it is the presence of Carnell. There's always this notion that it's vice versa, that it's Jeremiah Smith that is making Carnell Tate or allows him to have these numbers and to be phenomenal on the other side of the formation. It's a symbiotic relationship. They are both NFL wide receivers.
Yeah, and again, with Washington's top linebacker is out. His name escapes me, so I apologize. But they are going to have to make some decisions. Perhaps their best tackler with him off the field is a safety transfer from Northern Arizona, I think, who is now going to be probably put in a position this weekend where he's going to have to play up a little bit and play in the box a little bit more, which means that play action opportunity, the deep posts off play action have a chance to really hit even more. And I think that with Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, the 18.3 yards a catch that's pretty gaudy. And the reason you can get that way is because you're taking those shots down the field. And Ohio State likes to take shots. And Ryan Day will tell us just that.
I like shots. I have a number that I don't love. Do you have a number that you don't love, or is yours also good?
I don't really have another number.
Oh, okay.
But let's hear yours.
Well, this is called Three Things Thursday.
Oh, that's right. 3 thoughts.
You only got 2 things?
Yeah, I was just going to make a thought about Caleb Downs, and I guess the number would be 2. Because I've been trying to figure out what the best guy is to spy DeMond Williams, and I think
no, don't do that.
The reason I say number 2 is because there's 2 other guys that can do it, and Caleb doesn't have to.
Oh, okay.
And for Ohio State to have an opportunity to really hem DeMond Williams in and to keep him from breaking loose. I think he had close to 100 yards rushing last week. He's averaging almost 12 yards an attempt on the season, which is another gaudy number. The Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles talent and the way that they can run sideline to sideline, the physical nature of the way they play, I think is obviously a great place for Ohio State to launch their defense. But how does the defense really succeed if Caleb Downs is stuck mirroring one player all day? And he's not going to. So that's the other number. It's 2. It's how do Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese eliminate what DeMond Williams is going to have to do for them to win this game?
Yeah, I think I was going back through rereading and listening to Matt Patricia's comments from a week ago, and I don't remember ever thinking this before, that the dual threat defensive player, and I'm not even talking about Caleb Downs, crazy as that is, but the eraser for a dual threat quarterback being someone like Arvell Reese with the ability to drop back into pass coverage if need be, to stay there and play traditional linebacker, to aid the pass rush, or to spy and be able to run sideline to sideline when they run to chase that play down. I mean, he does everything that you need to defend a quarterback with DeMond Williams' skill set. It's remarkable. Yeah. And it doesn't require, to your point, a full 11 defense. Yes, you have to have your attention. Your defensive line has got to be disciplined with their rush lanes. They can't let him out of the pocket. They can't freelance, all those things. Coverage has to be tight on the back end. I know that defense overall still is going to require all 11, but if the difference maker, when you looked at here's the wrinkle that makes it really hard to defend this offense, it is someone with that skill set where DeMond Williams can both run and pass. I mean, Arvell Reese can account for both of those things himself as well.
Well, there's all the conversation Ryan Day talked about on Tuesday about how they can equate numbers in the run game. If you have a guy like Arvell Reese, who is essentially 2 players in one, or Caleb Downs, who's 2 players in one, Ohio State at times looks like they have 13 defensive players on the field because those guys are just all over the place. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, this is not part of the conversation, but I was listening to a Washington podcast on my drive down to Columbus on Wednesday, and one point they brought up, and I think it's interesting from how do you defend DeMond Williams, is that Steve Belichick was Washington's defensive coordinator the last couple of years. And remember, Washington made the national championship game 18 months ago. Remember that?
I do remember it.
That was 18 months ago, and it feels like it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But I wonder how much similarity there is in the Matt Patricia encyclopedia and what Steve Belichick had them working against every day in practice for the last couple of years. So I wonder if Washington, part of their confidence is feeling like, hey, we've seen parts of this defense before. Now, the problem is, even if Steve Belichick was running a Xerox copy of the Ohio State defensive game plan over the last couple of years, they didn't have the Ohio State players.
Yeah, I don't think he was running it with Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, so Caleb Downs, Caden Curry,
the confidence from the Washington side heading into this game is palpable.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's strange.
Yeah.
As strange as the betting line. So we got to the same point, I think, with what you were talking about with the SPY and the conversation that has been ongoing ad nauseum. This is a collective tackle for loss number. So again, it's a raw total. It is 17. Now, ironically, Washington has the exact same number. So some of the things that we're talking about with Ohio State being able to find rushing lanes, the opportunity to throw downfield, we can maybe, say the same thing, that Ohio State hasn't proven that they can make a ton of plays behind the line of scrimmage yet either. Although we've said when it comes to, Grambling in Ohio, and even when they were the way they defended Arch Manning, that was not necessarily their goal, was to make a ton of plays in the backfield. But they're tied, and you'd say, well, okay, 5.5 tackles for loss per game. That'd be pretty good if you could sustain that. But that's number 72 in the country. For this program, with its amount of playmakers, I think that's where you've got to see a dramatic uptick. And I'm not talking specifically about sacks. I've been around here long enough to have heard the conversation about affecting the quarterback, pressuring the quarterback, and that sacks are not the exact same thing. But when we're looking at success stopping the run and getting 1 or 2 yard losses or stopping them for no gain, I know that those aren't going to show up quite on that stat sheet or improve that number. They've got to actually be behind the line of scrimmage. But I think that's where the uptick needs to come for this team. There's going to be plenty of opportunities to do that. If Devon Williams starts to run, that's where we'd see not just Kenyatta Jackson at his best to run somebody down. Caden Curry, same deal, collapsing the pocket on the inside from Caden McDonald. But I'd like to see, more of that from Arvell Reese at the same time, just like he did against Texas in the opener. So 17 tackles for loss through 3 games. I think it needs to be like double digits against Washington, especially because the way they play should afford those opportunities.
No, Washington will be the first team this year that will attempt to stress Ohio State vertically on offense. Texas, Grambling State, and Ohio were all very horizontal, very quick stuff at the line of scrimmage. The key for tackles for loss for me heading into this game is making sure that Jonah Coleman, the running back for Washington, who's averaging 70+ yards a carry, or just about 7 yards a carry, he's like 5'9", 230 pounds. Like, he's a bowling ball. So you have to hit him at the line of scrimmage or behind it and not allow him to get going downhill. But it's not really about his numbers. Ohio State does not worry about like running backs having gaudy numbers generally. But if Washington gets into 3rd and short situations, that's where Damon Williams really becomes a problem, because that's when numbers get equated. And he's so quick that getting a yard or 2 is going to be east. If he's in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, go ahead, run for 5 yards. Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
But getting guys down when they hit is the most important thing. Washington, and don't quote me on this, but I'm fairly confident. I've read that they missed 17 missed tackles against Washington State and 17 missed tackles the game before. Ohio State's starting defense has 10 missed total tackles for the season. You have to make sure that stays the same for Ohio State. You have to tackle really well in this game. And Washington has not been very good at that, and they've played subpar opponents, and so they've been able to get away with it. But there's going to be some interesting side action happening with just who's getting the pressure, but who's actually making the plays when you're getting pressure, because Julian Sayin is not going to beat you like Damon Williams does with his legs, but if he gets the time to extend a play, we saw it against Ohio, the touchdown to Max Clare. Like, Julian is good enough. If you don't tackle him when you have a chance in the backfield, he's going to make you pay with his arm. And Damon Williams, completing 70% of his passes and hasn't turned the ball over and running for 100 yards, like, he can do the same thing. So whether it's Kenyatta Jackson or Arvell Reese or Sonny Styles or Jalen McClain, or if it's Jermaine Matthews on a corner blitz, like, if you hit the guy in the backfield, you got to bring him down. There can't be the missed tackles.
Yeah. We'll see. Three Things Thursday was very straight-laced.
Yeah, well,
no vibes.
There's no time for jokes.
Oh, I don't know. This was
pure analysis all the time.
That was too much analysis. I don't know.
Oh,
People,
we'll see if Bold Predictions goes off the rails on Friday.
It's got to, because we've now bottled up the weirdness. We didn't have any of that in this show.
No.
Very out of character for us, but
this is a serious game on the road. I mean, this is a weird game for Ohio State for a number of reasons. They haven't played at Washington in almost 20 years.
True.
Haven't played them since the 2019 Rose Bowl.
True.
First road game of the season.
True.
First road game for Julian Sain.
True.
All coming off an off week. Like, there's a lot of like weird things that are all filtering into this game. And I think that's why Vegas is seeing it the way they are. And I think that's why Washington's media and the people that follow that program are confident. But again, I also think people just forgot Washington played in the national championship game 18 months ago.
I think they're maybe forgetting that Ohio State is good because they didn't play last week.
Yeah, maybe. I think there's a lot of people who think Ohio State is, there's a lot of folks just waiting for Ohio State to lose the game so they can go, aha, we told you, they're not that good.
Well, we'll see if they get their way. I suspect that they won't on Saturday afternoon. That game is at 12:30 Pacific time, 3:30 Eastern time on CBS. Looking forward to getting out there to the Pacific Northwest for this one. Big Ten opener, as Birm mentioned. We will be leaving on Friday. The Buckeyes leave today, which is Thursday, a Three Things Thursday on the beat. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back on Friday with bold predictions and probably a little bit more weirdness than we got in today. But
most likely.
Sometimes you just got to cut those numbers down.
Dial in.
And then we'll drill down tomorrow. He's Birm. I'm Austin. Thanks again for joining us. We'll talk to you tomorrow.